Hey everybody, this is Scott from Lawrence Hypnotherapy, and welcome to this interview with Benjamin Harvey. And this is one that I've been excited about for a very long time. So my kind of introduction to this, I suppose, like in seeing Benjamin's like on stage with people that I've been following for a long time. Like as much as like I was a fan, the word got around so much that I actually had my friends tell me to come to these events because like this is how popular these events were. So in his pursuit to help people to live a life they love, Benjamin J. Harvey has studied the psychology of empowerment for over 15 years. In 2009, he founded Authentic Education with business partner Cham Tang. They have since trained well over 45,000 people in personal development methodologies and over 1,000 people to become highly successful in international certified coaches. As a result, Authentic Education went on to achieve something that has never been done before in the history of personal development industry. They received the BRW Fast Starters Award in 2013, and then backed it up in 2015 as being named in the BRW Fast 100 as the 38th fastest growing company in Australia. So this is epic. I'm such a big fan of the work that you do. Welcome. How have you been?
I've been well. I've been very well. Looking forward to chatting with you. It's been a while. It's been a while from setting up the interview to getting here. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I'm so grateful to be able to chat and ask you some questions.
Yeah.
And so,
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited. I've seen you doing some interviews. I've seen you getting out there, getting your maximum amount of value out of your ISO, which is awesome. And geez, you've been interviewing some very big names out there in the industry. It's cool. It's good to watch, Scott. Very cool.
It's a lot of fun. So I suppose in Melbourne in lockdown, like where the challenge is that you've got to stay active and you've got to basically use your time as best as possible. We've got 3 more weeks before we can basically like leave our houses. And we want to be safe. And on the same time, we want to make sure that something continues to happen. And so like what I felt like with the celebrity interviews, that it was really an opportunity for me to do something I haven't done before. So yeah, it's been epic. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, obviously like, you know, people reach out and they go, how? And you're like, well, a lot of these people are locked up themselves as well. So, you know, and it feels like, you know, for a crime they didn't commit, like, you know, nobody wanted 2020 to be how it's been. But it's like a few sayings I've heard which are really cool. Like one is that doing okay is the new awesome. But then another one, like to go further than that, is like we can do a lot better than coping.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for watching those. Like it's really awesome, you know, that, you know, to see that, you know, those ones get watched. What I'd love to hear is like with personal coaching. So like just in order to kind of like zoom out of this whole thing and kind of like look at it as if almost from another planet or just like from this outsider's perspective, if you could have chosen, like, say, like any career, like whether it was like shelf stacking or kind of being a doctor or kind of being a musician, but then like what you've chosen is to basically to be on stage and talk about whether it's improving people's businesses or improving people's lives, you've chosen to kind of do, you know, to teach, to educate and to inspire. Why, how did that come about? Like, why did that become your path?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. Like the word chosen is a very interesting choice of words in the sense that I don't know. I'm in 2 minds about whether or not we actually choose our career path or whether it chooses us. It's always that free will versus destiny versus, you know, what really goes on. So I don't know if life circumstances prepare us for a specific cog in the wheel of life, and we just get better at that cog, and then eventually we find ourselves doing that thing and it just all seems to make sense. But did we actually sit there and consciously choose it, or did all of our experiences in life collide and produce these strengths that happen to fit this career path? You know, it's always this nurture nature thing. But I think the word fell into it. I think I fell into it more so than anything else. I think for me, I had a pretty tough childhood, as a lot of people have. You know, a lot of people have traumas and issues, and my traumas and issues are no worse than anybody else's. And I think that kind of leads you on a path, like a quest of trying to discover what can be done, how can you fix yourself, what are the different roads you can take to have a better life. But for me, one of the big turning points was seeing Dr. Wayne Dyer speak on stage back in 1998. And I remember watching what he did on stage, and I just remember something inside me sort of turned on, something awoken. And I think it was probably at that moment that I became attracted to the industry. So I don't think I was thinking about it before that. I think I was kind of just completely lost with my life and everything wasn't working and I was struggling in every area you could struggle in. But it was just this one chance meeting of watching Wayne Dyer grace a stage in front of about 10,000 people and just watching all these people in total awe and just in this centered, focused state, transforming. And I think that planted the seed to want to maybe get into that industry. But it took me another, I don't know, probably another 10 years after that before I even entered the industry. But definitely I think Wayne Dyer had an impact on that journey or that pathway to that career point. But like most people, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life for most of my life. And so I don't think I had a calling from within, or I don't think, I don't believe I was born to do this. I think just a series of events led me to this, and it ended up being quite a lot of fun. Like it ended up being quite enjoyable talking to people and becoming a coach and running workshops and running retreats. And it's enjoyable. I think at the end of the day, people look for things they enjoy, but they also look for things they're good at. And then they fall in love with them. So I don't know if you fell in love with it first, but I think a lot of people go and do something. They find they enjoy it. They find they can get pretty good at it. And then they learn to love it. And then before they know it, they're doing what they love. So yeah, I always think about this, like what really comes first? Do you love the thing and then do it? Or do you do the thing and then love it? But yeah, my journey was falling into it after seeing Wayne Dyer and then pursuing that career because I didn't really find a lot of fulfillment in other things. Plus I went through about 5.5 years of chronic mental illness. So I struggled big time with manic depression or bipolar, depending on, what you call it. And for about 5.5 years of my life, from 1997 to 2002, I was in and out of psychiatric wards. So I spent about 1.5 years of my life locked in psychiatric departments, and predominantly most of that time was spent in the higher security area of it. So yeah, probably a large amount of my time just being locked up, dealing with mental illness and being medicated and struggling to get my brain to work. And in 2002, unfortunately, my best friend from school made the decision to terminate his own life, and it shocked me and it kind of woke me up. And so I think it was kind of those two things. Seeing Wayne Dyer on stage in 1998 as my depression was really beginning to take hold of me. And then my best friend doing that thing with his life. Those two moments, I think, created the perfect storm of trauma and opportunity to then catapult me into this pathway. And since then, I've just enjoyed it. I find a lot of pleasure in seeing people grow and seeing people transform. As with you, you do amazing work with what you do and the people that you work with. So I'm sure you understand, you get it. It's an enjoyable thing to know that people's lives get better because of your career. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you much, so much for sharing that. What I really want for this video, especially like for people watching who, let's say that they want to do what you do. They want to be successful like what you're doing, whether it's because they're in a hole or whether they're doing amazing and they want to keep growing. At the same time, kind of like, because you talked about like sort of pain that you've had in the past. A lot of people, and what we seem to sort of find the numbers sort of show us, is that people that have had pain often make decisions to go down. You made a decision to go up. And you talk about it like it's almost like the Batman story. It's like, that his parents were killed and then he decided to like fight for justice. What you tend to hear is more like the Joker story, that like they had one bad day and they decided to become a criminal. So often like what we hear is that like when someone's been through something like that, they kind of like, it becomes an identity. and then they start to sort of like find ways to go further down, consciously or not, but it just seems like to be something that's really a struggle for people. What I'd love if you could, like, as a challenge, like weave together an answer that sort of gives us like, how did you find that a bad thing happening to you was a platform for making something really brilliant out of it? And also, like, because of this year, because of so many things have changed this year, but a lot of things have also not changed this year. If somebody wants to be like you and to be successful like you, what's changed and what hasn't, and what should be some of their first steps?
Got it. So I think, well, let me preface it by saying this. In the year 12 book from the school that I went to, it was written that Benjamin Harvey is the most likely to end up in Long Bay jail. So just so you can appreciate, it wasn't that I had a bad thing happen and chose to do good things. It was for the majority of my youth, I was doing bad things. So it wasn't an immediate flip around from that perspective. And so in my teenage, I mean, I had some abuse that happened when I was about 6 years of age at the hands of a neighbor. And it was very traumatic. It was a sexual abuse, and it really messes with your brain, and you start to express yourself in quite negative ways, which I did for a large portion of my life. Wayne Dyer would always have this quote, though, that the wake of the boat doesn't determine the direction in which it travels. And it's really important to understand that whatever's in your wake, that doesn't determine where the boat goes, because anytime you can grab the steering wheel and turn it anywhere you like. And so I always remembered this quote from Wayne, that the wake of the boat doesn't determine the direction in which it travels. And so a lot of people are letting the wake of their boat decide where the boat ends up. But the boat has a steering wheel, and you can grab that steering wheel any day you want. And so it wasn't that I had something bad happen and turn into something good. It's that I hit the bottom of the bottom and I couldn't go any lower. And this is kind of the conundrum. When you've hit the absolute bottom and you can't go any darker, and you can't go any more depressed, and you can't get any, more mentally broken, you kind of, you're only really left with one option, which is to go up, because there's no more down. So if anything, I hit the bottom of the pit and I couldn't go any deeper. And then I thought, if I can't go any deeper, what do I do now? And for me, that's when the turning point came. And I think there's a lot of reality to the fact that when you find a person's wound, you often find their worth. And the biggest journey for most people out there is learning how to get the shame and the guilt, the things that they're most ashamed of in life, and understanding how to transform that. There's this concept that we talk about, untransmuted greatness, where people have traumas in their lives. They have things they're embarrassed about. They've got things they're ashamed about. They've got things they feel guilty about. But that actually contains all the value that they're ever going to bring to the world. And most people stay trapped by their shame and guilt, which leads them to more negative behaviors, which leads them to, as you say, being a criminal or a drug addict, whatever it is, right? So when people learn the art of owning their shame and guilt, going through it with enough intensity to then turn it into value, that's where the miracles happen. And that's kind of, for me, that's how I see all of transformation, is when a human being can surrender, open up, get vulnerable, move through their shame and guilt, and then lead with it. To tell people that I was locked in a psych ward for years, I would never told anyone, because I was so embarrassed by it. To be sexually abused by a man when I was 6, I was so embarrassed by it. I was so ashamed of it. But nowadays, it's actually my power. There's this transformational point. So in answer to your question, I think the first step that people can do is they've got to find, I say dig for the diamonds. You've got to find the value in life experiences. You've got to be willing to dig for the diamonds, because everything in your life can be a diamond if you change the perception and you look for the value of it. So for me, it began with a journey of looking for the value in all the things that had happened, looking for the value in the traumas, what I'd learned, and so on. And then from there, using that as fuel to transform it. So I think everybody always, and you do hypnosis, so you would know a large amount of hypnotherapy is the concept of having two roads. And one road leads to really bad consequences, and one road leads to really great benefits. And that's kind of the philosophy of life. Everyone stands at a fork in the road, And we're always choosing, you know, like you want to help someone quit smoking, you just got to show them the consequences of the bad road and the benefits of the good road. And if you add enough intensity to that, they'll create an internal decision point, and voila, they're a non-smoker. And you can do that, you can do that in a matter of minutes. So it's every human being basically is constantly standing at two roads. And it's just these little choices that determine, are you going to go down the bad road or up the good road? And eventually people will begin to navigate to a more empowering state if they are able to find value. If they can't find value, they'll often take the bad road. So if I blame everybody or I hate society, then I'll take the bad road constantly, and I'll constantly end up doing the things that aren't empowering. But if I find value and I see some type of benefit, it helps me choose the good road, so to speak, and allows me to go and make more empowering choices. So I think the important thing that people need to start with is to try to look for value. You know, I think it's always about a value exchange. I mean, business is all about the exchanging of value. But life is about the exchanging of value. You know, transformation is about finding values. So for me, I had to find value in myself because I had a very low self-worth. Now, how does that all translate to people wanting to get started and wanting to navigate, 2020? I think 2020 has done this bizarre thing where it's forced everybody into extreme levels of distress. Then it's put them in isolation, solitary confinement, and it's actually caused. What's that? Except for
we've been sent to our rooms.
Totally, you've been sent to your rooms, and I speak with a lot of people, and what they're finding is, even though it's really bad, like it is, the state of mental health right now is terrible, and it's globally, it's just a bad situation. The other side of the coin, though, is it's accelerated our distress to a point where we're so disgusted with our lives, we want to fix it. So even though it's bad and a lot of people can't cope with it, it's actually good for the people who can just cope with it, because they are now fixing things that they wouldn't have fixed for 10 years. They're now dealing with stuff that they wouldn't have dealt with probably for the next 30 years. So it's brought everything to a head and said, hey, all these things in your life that aren't working, start fixing them. You're at home, you're in confinement, do some work on yourself. And so we are seeing that people are making these absolute turning point, life-changing decisions that they may never have made in their life because of this pandemic. So how does that translate to getting into this industry, as you asked, and wanting to get started? Well, what we're finding is that now's the kind of the best time in the world. I mean, if you ever thought of a career in transformation, coaching, healing, hypnotherapy, kinesiologist, Reiki, if you ever thought of a career in self-empowerment, now's the best time, because the demand has severely outstripped the supply. And from a business perspective, the opportunity to be successful in that field, it's never been better. And most coaches aren't willing to admit it, but the last 6 months of their life has been the most successful 6 months of their life, because everybody needs the ability to be able to trust people, the ability to be able to be vulnerable, the ability to be able to have human connection. And so I would say that now's the best time in history for people to make a career change, because most of the careers are, they're working from home, they're all getting wrapped up, and to go and do more meaningful work. And this market now, with the stuff, I mean, you and I are now chatting via Zoom. Zoom's been around for ages. People don't realize it's been around for so long, but most people thought it was invented in January or something. It's been around for years, years and years. But now everybody's using it. So when we look at all the key reasons why people would want to make a shift, first of all, we've all got the time now because we're all at home. The technology is crazy. Everybody's using Zoom. Everyone knows how to do it. And the trust, everyone's looking for people they can trust now, because people don't believe they can trust the news anymore. They can't trust this, they can't trust that. And a coach or someone like you who goes out there and helps people, they have trust. You can trust this person because they're on your side to help you get the goals. So I don't know if that answered all of your questions, but I tried my best to answer as many as I could.
Something I love about what you do.
Questions.
You've got a really good knack, though, if you go the deep and then the specific. Say there was a story I heard about a man who was had such a big heart that he tried to help out every creature that existed, like even a moth. And so the moth, like, you know, when it's gone from I'm assuming caterpillar to moth, and then in between is like some kind of a cocoon thing that happens in between. For people who have studied it more, the larvae, whatever that's called. I'm not a biologist, but the story goes that the guy cared so much for the moth that's struggling to get out of its cocoon that he actually opened up the cocoons for them. He timed, and he knew that they would be fully developed, so that on the hour that they were meant to escape, he just let them out. And what they found is that like all of those moths died that day. And he's going like, well, I let them out, but like, how is it that like they've all died, all of them, and the others that mostly survive, unless they fly into a fire? And like what they worked out is like part of like the struggle of getting out of the cocoon, nature doesn't like seem to have one task equals one outcome. Nature seems to be very resourceful, that one task seems to have multiple outcomes because so much time's passed that we're very complex now. And so that part of what was happening with the moth is that the act of escaping the actual cocoon was pumping blood into its wings, which is what it needs to live. And so like when you talk about kind of finding value, like, you know, whether it's like from shame to finding that the shame itself is the value, it's kind of like, I suppose what I'm hearing is that the good thing is the bad thing if you let it, versus kind of like the attraction to just, can you give me the magic step? And what we're kind of saying is like, yes, absolutely, here's the magic step, but also here's the value of honoring the struggle.
Yeah.
One of the first time, because like, you know, you talk about like, say, Dr. John DeMartini, and the first time I saw you, you guys were on stage together. And I've seen you like on stage with these like big names, and like just in awe of like what it is that you've been able to achieve. Let's say if I could ask, if somebody comes to one of your events, I've seen you've made it fun. You've done like a balloon popping thing as metaphor. Like you're like the master of utilization, that you get people involved in what they're doing. What can people expect when they come to one of your events? What's it about? What happens?
Well, I mean, we have a range of different events. So we run 8 different events throughout the year, and each one does something different. But fundamentally, if you drill it down and you look behind businesses, you'll often find that each business is designed to deliver a single outcome to the end user. And for us, that outcome is freedom. So we may have 8 different events, but fundamentally, if you ask me, what do I sell? Like, we're a business, obviously, we transact in a marketplace, we make money, we're profitable and so on. What do we actually sell? I don't believe we sell education. I don't believe we provide events. What I believe is that we have the most direct pathway to freedom, to having a life where you are working your own hours, wearing what you want, earning what you want, doing what you want, in accordance with what you deem to be important to you. So no matter what event you come to, behind it all is this concept of freedom. And when I look at the world of business, I kind of always think, when I look at very successful people, they've all got a nemesis, right? There's this bizarre thing that says, if you really want to succeed, you need a nemesis.
And jobs.
That's what. Well,
DC and Marvel.
Totally, exactly. So you need to have one, right? And what I worked out is, early on in my career, I wanted to work out, who's my nemesis? Like, what am I out to beat or destroy? And I know this is not the nicest way of putting it, but that's kind of the reality of it. And I realized that what I wanted to destroy was one thought that people have around the world. And I think to myself that when I leave this planet, if I've managed to eradicate that thought, then I have achieved my highest possible level of mission. And so for me, the thought that I want to eradicate from a human's brain is the thought where someone sits down and they look out to the world and they're miserable and they say to themselves, I don't know what I want to do with my life. So for me, our whole business is focused and targeted at that neural network inside someone's brain, and we're attempting to destroy it. We're attempting to eradicate from a person's brain the thought, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And so our whole company is designed to provide freedom, but we do that by completely eradicating the thought. Now, how do we eradicate the thought? Well, we make sure that everybody that we ever work with leaves our organization doing only what they love. Because if they're doing what they love, they'd never ask themselves the question again. They'd never say the thought, I don't know what I want to do with my life. So for us, we're very precise with our targeting. Everything that we design, build, create, our products, our home study programs, our retreats, our coaching, it's all designed to remove that thought from your brain and then provide you with the tools, the resources, and the skill sets to have absolute freedom in your life. And what that then results in is a human being. I mean, our slogan is live your love. It's just 3 words. So it results in a human being doing that. That if they were asked, how's life, they'd just say, I'm living the dream. Or they'd say, I love my life. I'm loving life. So that's really what it's about. So, we've got events like the Turning Point. We've got how to become a highly successful coach. We've got marketing events. But underneath it, it's all the same thing. Remove that thought and give you freedom. And that's what we're about.
Absolutely. I love that concept of everyone has a nemesis. And I love that concept of the real business isn't what people think the real business is. So like authentic education is like you use education, education happens, it's one of your tools, but freedom is why they're there. It's like at the nightclub, are they selling drinks or are they actually selling relationships or a good night or whatever it is? Or we could say McDonald's is not a fast food outlet, it's a toy manufacturer and a real estate company. Or Apple's not a technology company, they're actually like a law firm. Because like say Sony Ericsson actually is the R&D department that Apple has drawn up lines and cut little bits of that company away where information is not allowed to flow from one part of Sony Ericsson to another. And it's that literacy of seeing the real game.
Totally. Yeah.
And I love that transparency of like, yes, education, but no education, because yes, but the point is the freedom. And the freedom is like destroy the phrase of I don't know what I want to do, which kind of funnels into kind of like, well, now I do. Giving people a journey, giving people kind of like an expansive look at like, well, whether it's, let's say very categorically, we could say, is it money, health, or relationships? Like what's your niche? Or is it fun? Do you kind of help people like with, is it addiction, mental illness? Like do you help people find a date, end a relationship, repair a marriage, or get over grief? Or do you help people with finances, marketing, and all sorts of things? Like with this year, it seems very rare that most people are advertising. And so like when I see your ads popping up all the time, I'd be like, well, one way to be successful, like with what you're doing, is like have a Facebook ad. Like that's one of the steps. That's not the whole picture, but it's a thing. But then you've talked about freedom, and you've talked about transforming the guilt into value.
Right.
It's I'm loving hearing that the real step that people should take is like if there's like a physical step of like run an event or attend an event or run a Facebook or whatever it is. And then beneath the surface, there's kind of like, look at how you are structured as a human being, and let's look at kind of like the real game that's going on.
Yeah. I mean, what I normally do, I just say to people, fundamentally, what is your nemesis? Do you have a thought you'd like to get rid of? Do you have, like, dream big? What do you want to remove from the planet? What do you want to change? Where's the global value of your idea? And so,
Yeah.
For me, a very first step is, first of all, work out what your values are. That's the critical first step of any human being, is to know what you value, right? So step one, work that out. Once I've worked that out, then you've got to find value in the market in your values. So if you find that you value gardening, well then, in the world of gardening, what is your nemesis? What is it? Is it weeds? Is it lawns being mowed in a zigzag instead of horizontal lines? Like, what's the nemesis? Is it the cross-pollination of flowers that aren't meant to cross-pollinate? If gardening's your thing, what's your nemesis? And go and eradicate the nemesis. So for me, it's really important to, first of all, know what you value. What do you love to talk about? What are you always researching? What skills are you acquiring? What are you contemplating all the time? What do you know? Find all that out. And then within that, work out what you're going to change. Fundamentally, businesses are attempting to change the world. That's what they're really trying to do. So work out on the bigger scale, even if it's just local or national, what is it that you would most like to change?
Yeah, because I think that a thinking style here, which is very different to maybe what's mostly said by probably most people, is like there's a bill cycle. Help me pay my bill. Help me do some business. Help me get a client so I can pay my bill. And we're kind of saying that that style of thinking within itself is actually kind of wrong because it's actually not going to solve the problem.
For sure.
Whereas another style of thinking is saying that the money is in the values. Let's look at like, what do you want to do to the world? What's your mission? Stand for something. What do you want to be? And then stuff like money will be a consequence. It'll flow. And doing steps like Facebook ads or doing steps by skill stacking, learn to speak better, write better, like the visual stuff that you've got to do to run a business, or the coaching, active listening, learning more about how problems fit together. As in like, what's the problem they're looking for? What's the path to get them there? What's the outcome they want to get at the end? What's the best way to drive the process? Those things will come when people lean in to step one. If it's, as you said, step one's the values. Step one isn't like, I ran an ad, no money came, oh well, which does seem to be like the common sentiment that's out there. Would you say is that absolutely a first step that people should take? Like start like on paper with a pen, literally start writing down their values?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I work with people, especially in business, at the end of the day, your business fundamentally needs the shortest number of steps between you and a paying client, right? That if we just strip business back and we look at it at its core, you need a straight line between you and a paying client, right? And until that happens, you're not in business. So until somebody pays you money, you're not in business. Until the money is exchanged, you don't really have a business. So a lot of people are doing all this stuff that's not business. So the most direct line between you and a paying client really just comes down to a very small number of steps, which is step one, identify what your values are. Power up your mindset by understanding what your values are. Step two, find somebody who is going to find value in your values that you can exchange value with. And then step three, package up what they need, to create some type of package, and then promote. And that's where your Facebook ads and so on, we sort of use 8 different ways of marketing. And then transact, right? So for us, it's less than 5 steps, and it's not a lot of steps to actually succeed in business. Now you can succeed in business outside of your values, but you generally won't last very long because your values are your identity. And if people try to change their identity too vastly to get into business, they're going to end up tearing down their business because their identity can't align to it. So for us, what we aim to do with everybody we meet is make sure that they don't have to change a lot. So if they're already thinking about gardening, if they're already reading gardening books, if they're already talking about gardening, then let's set them up as a gardening coach so they don't have to change a lot. But if they're talking about gardening, reading about gardening, thinking about gardening, studying gardening, and then we ask them to go and be a wealth coach, they have to change their identity, which means they won't stick at it long enough. So the reason why values is so important is because people are trying to change too much in order to succeed, and they don't realize that your identity is so deeply ingrained in who you are that the change of identity can take years for people to achieve. So if you're in business, the reason most businesses fail within about 2 years is because their identity changed so dramatically to run this business that it eventually collapsed because they never made the true internal shift.
Yeah.
So for
Maybe
me,
3 months to deliver.
Totally. I basically just say, leave your identity as is. Whoever you are and what you love, let's wrap a business around that, and let's not try and change you at all. If you like talking one-to-one, let's create a one-to-one sales process. If you like socializing in groups, let's create a group system, a tribal network of Facebook groups that drives your business. So let's find out how you function already. Let's check all your existing cognitive biases, all your social behaviors that you already have, and then let's design a business that supports you as yourself. And if we do that, you will succeed. But the problem is people look at other people's models, they try to replicate their model, not realizing that their psychology is totally different. The way they go to a party is completely different to the way you go to a party. And that determines how you're going to network and socialize and promote and market. So for us, I mean, the reason we call it authentic education is because we believe that if a human being just remains truly authentic, they will always have the greatest competitive advantage. The number one greatest competitive advantage in the marketplace is authenticity. So if a person just bees themselves and then understands how to integrate a business into themselves, they will win. But if they try to integrate themselves into a business, they will lose every time within about 2 years. Within about maximum of 7 years, they'll make it, but normally within about 2 to 3 years, they are going to lose because they are not themselves and they cannot keep the act up long enough for the change to really become, ingrained at a transformational level. So for me, business is not tricky. It's a very easy thing to do. Cham and I have done it time and time again. For entertainment, about every 2 years or so, we will start a business from scratch, zero start, zero leads, zero database. And we always, try to test this philosophy. And the last one we did was about 2 years ago. We went to a brand new country. They'd never heard of us before. We didn't leverage any of our pre-existing brand or anything. And within 2 weeks of spending $10,042, we had taken in $249,000. And we did it in 2 weeks, just to prove that the art of business is not tricky. That's actually not the difficult part. The difficult part is making sure that you are truly congruently aligned to the business. Because anyone can make money, but to make it sustainably for a long period of time requires that you get the values correct. So all the marketing stuff, that once you know that, it's just a matter of hitting buttons and automating things and getting keywords right and getting the value proposition correct and so on.
So what I'm hearing, like, just to round it, like with those numbers, something like around the 10 grand in 2 weeks brought about $250,000. But to make it sustainable, the point is that you want to make sure this is something you continue with, and you need like the steps you've given. So if I can kind of play with like an alliteration thing, like you gave me like 5 steps. So if we call it like, say, 5 Ps, and you've probably got a different framework, but if I can play and go like, let's say philosophy, people, package, promote, and profit or something. So philosophy, what's your values? Promote, who needs that, who would benefit? Package, put it together. Promote, put it out. It could be the ads and all sorts of things, targeting. Then the profit, where, keep track and make sure that continues.
Yeah, I mean, we do use Ps. So our 5, step 1 is to power up your mindset. Step 2 is to profile your ideal client. Step 3 is to package up your passion. Step 4 is to promote for paying clients. And step 5 is to prosper with productivity. So that's the 5 steps that we actually utilize. But fundamentally, all business, it's so funny when you said Ps, all business really is just 5 things. Every business on the planet fits into just 5 activities. Value creation, marketing, sales, value delivery, and finances. Full stop. That's it. Every business in the world does those 5 activities. So if you understand each of those 5 activities, how do you create value? How do you market it? How do you sell it? How do you deliver it? And then how do you manage your money? Then you can run any business in the world. The problem is that people don't understand that at the core, 80% is mindset and 20% is mechanics. So that value delivery and packaging and Facebook ads, that's all mechanics. And mechanics are not that tricky. If you take a little bit of time to learn it, you realize making money is easy. But getting this mindset to work, that's the most challenging part. And that's why people like you have such a cataclysmic impact on people, because if they don't work with people like you, they're never going to run the ad. They're never going to write the copy. They're never going to package themselves. They won't do any of the mechanics if their mindset doesn't work. And people fail to do this. So they're always looking for the next quick hack. Like, what is the Facebook code? What's the special pixel I can do? What's my retargeting, blah, blah. But they won't do those things.
Like, learn it, play with it. But there's a deeper thing, as you were saying, that to make it sustainable or to make people actually do it. Because I guess like we've heard people so much like say that they're tired and exhausted and stuff. And you went, so many bad things happened to you, which helped you to transition into the good. It's like that a conversation with someone recently. It's like that if you want to get like passive income, I do an online course and never speak to anyone. Like I was basically saying the fastest way to do that is do the exact opposite and spend more time with people, lean in, not away, because then the skill stacking involved in that can then allow you to have the other. And I love those 5 Ps. Thank you so much. I'm going to put that in the description as well so that people can kind of see that these are steps. What I'd really, really, really love to hear, why they're so powerful and why aren't people using them? Because it's like whether maybe the answer is because it's intangible, or that maybe the mechanics is all you can see and the mechanics is the evidence that the inside values matter. But it takes a long time for those for the experience to develop in order to see that like mechanics, it's not enough, that you actually need in a game. So why are most people not just instinctively, just intuitively, just doing this stuff?
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to a couple of things. As you're asking me the question, though, I kind of asked my intuition what answer I want to give today, because obviously if you watch 10 of my interviews, I'm going to give different answers each time, because there's many different ways of approaching things. But I would fundamentally say at the core, the reason people aren't going out there and making things happen is obviously because of the 3 things that hold us back: our values and them being in conflict with each other, what we believe to be true that isn't, but also the stories we tell ourselves. But underneath all of that, there's a story that permeates the world that's so toxic that everywhere you look, it's being promoted. And the story is called natural talent. And when a human being believes in natural talent, their whole world ends at that point. Because if people look at somebody who's successful and they say they're naturally talented, the second they say that, they've lost all opportunity of ever being successful. And they realize that success is not a magical manifestation. Success is 3 things: your attitude, your effort, and your skill. And that is it. And if you're not willing to have the right attitude, which is your mindset, put in the right effort, which is actual effort, and then acquire the correct skills, you will never succeed, no matter how many times you read the book, The Secret. And people just don't get this. They think that because everyone's promoting this ask and it's given law of attraction thing. And I'm a huge fan of the law of attraction. Don't get me wrong. I use it every single day of my life. But what I found after 45,000 students going through our programs, I can tell you the law of attraction works significantly better for people who have the right attitude, who acquire the right skills and put in the right effort. And it works significantly worse for people who don't. And there's a direct correlation there. So people keep believing that they're going to get this much result for that much effort. And whoever sold them that idea needs to be slapped, because it's such a false idea. You know, when you think about it, you're grinding it out. You're doing interviews. You're sitting and you're chatting. You're putting in the effort, right? And you're going to be rewarded for that. But there are people right now in lockdown who are sitting on their couch, staring at a wall, doing nothing. They're not sharpening their saw. They're not learning. They're not studying. They're not utilizing time. They're walking around with a crappy attitude. They're putting in no effort, and they're not acquiring any skills. During this 6 months, they could have upskilled themselves like never before and absolutely launched themselves off this pandemic in a way that they'd never seen before. But because they believed in natural talent, like, oh yeah, Scott gets the interviews because he's naturally talented. Scott gets the interviews because he's naturally good at the code. No, Scott gets the interviews because you reached out, you put in an effort, you asked people, you put yourself out there, you were vulnerable, you were willing to be rejected, and you went for it anyway. So you get rewarded because you did something. But people think that, oh, Scott's naturally talented. But wait a minute, the guy...
What an insult.
Thank you. That is the word. The greatest insult a human can ever say to somebody who is successful is, you are so naturally talented. When people say that to me, I correct them on the spot. And it's quite abrupt for them because I think they're giving me a compliment. I stop them and I say, please don't ever say that to me again, because every time you say that, you ignore the fact that I've put in thousands of dollars into my education and tens of thousands of hours into where I am today. and the effort and the sleepless nights I put in to get here, and then you go and call that natural, I consider that to be an insult. And it just shocks them because they're not expecting me to say that, because it is an insult. And so if people gave up natural talent, they would succeed, because anybody can be a coach. Anyone can be a hypnotherapist. Anyone can be a great speaker. They're all skills, and skills can be acquired, but they can only be acquired through effort. You can't build skill any other way. You don't get given skill. Skill is contingent on effort and attitude. So that's the number one reason. You can blame it on anything else, but the real reason is attitude, effort, and skill. And this was pointed out by a gentleman called Kazuo Inamori. He's known as the Buddhist billionaire, and he's created 2 multi-billion-dollar companies out of Japan. And his whole philosophy is that the secret to happiness and success in life is these 3 things: attitude, effort, and skill. And we've got it actually written out in our office on our wall, so we never forget it, that attitude times effort times skill equals success. And anybody who ignores that is not going to succeed.
100%. I agree with all of that. To link it back to like the nemesis, which is the narrative of that, like you're talented, or you're lucky, or how lucky are you that your dishes are clean? That's luck, isn't it? It's like, well, hang on, I was in the kitchen doing them. And here's the opportunity. If we look at, the values that will sustain the person, I noticed that, like, as you were saying, 45,000 people that you've helped, attitude, you always say first. And it sounds like that's the most important one. So the opportunity is that if you can believe that you actually get to decide your attitude and your efforts and the amount of hours you spend on literally scheduling skill development, not just skills, give me one, like in the Matrix, like I know Kung Fu, I know origami. Origami, I think, is paper folding. But scheduling time, like how much, so if you're watching, how much time have you scheduled this week in how to upskill something? If it's a lot, congratulations. If none, here's an opportunity. Here's a pivot point that can happen right this second, straight after this video. I love that. I absolutely love that, because like, how to get successful, do these 3 things. And I just feel like, you've shared so much value. Like, it's been fun. It's been interesting. It's really great. And you've shared so much. I also feel like there's so much more that you could share, or like so much more that for people watching this. How can that happen? Like, what's a way that people can get in contact with you? Or
we always say our website is just filled with heaps of value. So authentic.com.au. So it's just one word, authentic.com.au. And when you go there and click around, you just find there's so much free stuff. I mean, we've got a store that sells like audio programs and stuff. But to be honest with you, if you spent 15 minutes on our site, you're going to find most of the audios for free somewhere on one page. So don't go to our store and buy anything. Just keep clicking, and then you'll find, oh, there's that CD for free. Oh, there's that. So there's a heap of free stuff on our website, and we run free events throughout the year. If the viewers were to go to authentic.com.au/coach, so just the word, so authentic.com.au/coach, if they go there, there's a page they can opt into, and they can come to an entire one-day event for free from the comfort of their own home, where we teach all kinds of, we teach those 5 business steps. We teach actual skill sets. We do coaching demonstrations. We show them processes they can use on their friends and family. We teach them how to present. So it's a full, jam-packed day of learning, and it's absolutely free for them to attend. So that's probably the best way to immerse themselves in content. I mean, obviously at that day we promote other things that we do, of course. However, it is just it's a full day of rock solid content all the way through it. So authentic.com.au/coach would be a place that they can have a look around. But just click around our website, and they'll find hours and hours of free programs and content and downloads that they can definitely stay entertained with.
Funny thing, like, because we were talking about attitude, because I've crewed at these events. I've been to a lot of your events, haven't crewed for you, crewed for others, I would. But the thing is, like, I've found, like, with the attitude, like, sometimes people go, I went to an event and they taught me things, but then they tried to sell me something. And I'm like, well, what did you think was going to happen? Like, this is a business. And so then, like, 90% of it is free stuff where they have the best time in their life. It's focused energy around the right people, the right mindset. Maybe 10% is like, would you like to continue working with me? And that's kind of it. A lot of people, what they found they would do is that they would turn up for the training and they would leave for the sales. What's something that's actually grown my business faster? This sounds so weird. I did the opposite. I would not turn up for the training and I would come for the pitch. And I would be writing down how people sell. Because to me, like, I'm going, well, what do I want to get better at? Turn up for that, where everyone's like so offended that somebody's just doing business, going, all right, I'm giving you so much for free and you're allowed to go if you want. They're the parts I turn up for. Because like we basically, like I had this like sales acronym thing I came up with. Like every speaker I've seen on the stage, I went like, I wrote, it was acronyms like sales offer. So I went, with all the letters, I went self-introduce, ambition, why you're here, life story. Oh, if you don't know me, I grew up as, and then S-A-L-E, environment. The world's changed because, whether it's 2020 or whatever, S-A-L-E-S, show bag where they teach. Then the offer comes, like the opportunity, the name of it, the features, the freebies, then energy up towards the end and register. And so like I actually wrote that on every piece of paper. And so if someone comes to any event, stay for the sales, write the acronym down and take notes how people are selling.
Yeah, I love the acronym. It's quite accurate. And for me, I'm the same. So I always make sure I'm there for the intro and for the offers, because the people who switch off during the offers, they're the ones who struggle the most in business, because their charge around sales is what prevents them from making any. And I do find that people who have that resistance, they definitely miss out on the learnings. And we're very transparent. At the very start of in fact, on our website, before you even register, it says that we're going to be offering products on the day. We don't hide any of that. And we explain it's an exchange. We're going to give you free stuff and we're going to promote. And that's the exchange. And if you don't like that, well, you probably shouldn't be at the event. So we make it really clear at the beginning. But you're quite right. For me, I found the most amount of value that I ever got in my career when I went to other people's events was absolutely taking as many notes as I could when they started to make their offer. That's where I found the greatest value in the day, for sure.
And then what happens seems to be like that, if you can sort of see that the pitch is actually also free stuff, because like, if you're in business, like, don't you want to sell better? Study it by like, get involved in a pitch, sit through as many as you can. Totally. Because that is free stuff too, and take notes to get better. And then another thing that can happen is you might hear that it's a really good thing to join too. Because it's like with this whole like, would you like to continue working with me? If kind of like you sort of go, well, I can see a path forward. So like the sale is not for the program. The sale is for their own future, as in, can you see a path forward for yourself? The only bit left is, cool, would you like me to be the one that helps? Great, no worries, come join. It's pretty relaxed. And so it's a good idea to join. But basically that attitude, I love that framework of like, don't get offended by stuff. It is ridiculous. It's like, you want to grow, but like, oh, they tried to, or whatever it is. It's like, I feel you hurt my feelings because it's like in the hypnotherapy stuff for smoking that I've done 10 years of. A client said to me once, I had an argument with my husband, so I smoked a cigarette at him. And I've gone, oh, you blew it in his face? Like, nah, he was at his parents' house 10 kilometers away. I've gone, was the wind going that, like, how did you smoke a cigarette at him? Oh, because he's the one that made me smoke it. And like, what? I'm sorry, I'm just confused. Like, you smoked a cigarette at him? It's like, when you're angry at someone, like, oh yeah, I've heard a lot of people say, I'm angry at you, or you made me angry. I haven't heard someone ever say before that I smoked a cigarette at them. So what they're saying is that the husband did something which made a trigger occur. And then that triggered then, through a series of psychological steps, they smoked. And then the sentence was, I smoked a cigarette at him. I'm going, well, you can't smoke a cigarette at someone. You can just smoke a cigarette. Yeah. So maybe you can't be angry at someone either. Maybe you also can't be offended at someone. You can just be doing offended.
Totally.
So it's like, it's such I suppose, an expose. It's like when we're saying that the real business of McDonald's is this, or the real business of you is not just education, it's freedom. Education's a tool. The real kind of business of life is not kind of, oh, look what they did wrong to me, look at my situation. Freedom's what can I make of it? And when we can get that switch, everything else can keep moving forward, and it just sort of, it irons out all the creases. It's like it's interesting when you talk about like my celebrity interviews and stuff and how hard I've worked. It never felt like that word didn't come up for me, yet I'm doing the work. So for me, like, it's like play. Like,
Yeah.
whenever I build a web page on a new tool that I've never used before, I would not want the concern or the worry of having to make it work. So like what I do instead is, like, I don't come up with brilliant marketing on a new tool. I come up with an absolute ridiculous joke with a new tool. And then the second web page I build is great marketing. So one that I gave out to students just recently, I don't know if you ever saw like Bert and Ernie, and then I think like Ernie gets approached by a guy called Lefty. It's a salesperson in a trench coat. He opens it up and goes, "Would you like to buy an O?" Because it's a song for early learning for children to teach them the sounds of the O. So the first web page I made on a tool was like, "Would you like to buy an O?" I made a PayPal account where people can give me 5 cents, because in the song it says, "It cost you just a nickel." I'm like, what? A nickel? Right. Buy the O and take it home tonight. Don't ask any questions. Just buy the O and take it home tonight. You really love it. Just buy the O. So it's, that was the first web page, and I just gave it to people as a joke. I'm like, don't give me 5 cents. It's functional. You can, but you're not actually buying an O.
Nice.
You're basically changing the attitude towards approaching things, which is like, it's effort, but like effort doesn't have to feel bad. Like effort can feel amazing.
Totally.
And that's
Fun.
the guilt to value is like, well, Bruce Lee kind of said a thing of play, but play seriously. Because you realize you can't be all tense and like, I'm being responsible, I'm being an adult, which is stiff. But at the same time, you can't be kind of just a goose and be like, I don't care about myself or you. Like they're both bad. So like there's this like positive overlap of playtime, highly focused, do something that's brilliant and really kind of grow yourself and do something fun with it. Do you have any closing statements, or what's a thing that you'd love to, because the last thing a person says seems to ring in people's heads. What's a thing that you would love to be the last thing that sort of echoes in somebody's minds?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I always think that it's important for people to go out there and share their light, live their love, and do whatever it takes to be their own best friend. So to me, that's kind of the 3 things that every human should do. Make sure that they do what they love, make sure that they share their light everywhere they go, and go out of their way to become their own best friend. Because if you are your own best friend, you will never have a problem again.
Absolutely. I love it. That's perfect. Thank you so much.
No worries, man. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It was a real pleasure. I really appreciate it.
It's been fun. No worries. I'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks.